Our last presenter tonight is Yvonne Taylor. She grew up here at Seneca Lake and now owns Lake property, been in her family for generations. She was in the planning stages to begin building a permanent home on the property when she learned of the LPG storage project that is almost directly across the lake from her property. After she could find out very few details from Energy and Schuyler County officials, she took it upon herself to research what she could. She's here tonight to present her concerns as a private citizen and as a landowner here in Schuyler County. Yvonne?
Thank you to everyone who made it here tonight. I'm just curious, could we have a show of hands of how many people attended the Energy presentation last evening? Okay, so many of you may recall that just before Bill Moeller stated that this has nothing to do with the Marcellus Shale, he told us all that he was our neighbor, that they were all our neighbors, that they loved the Finger Lakes. So when they did allow us to wait in line at stations and ask a few individual questions of each Energy representative, I asked one simple question of each of them. It was this: so, where do you live? None of them live in Schuyler County, other than the attorney and the landscaper and a few others who do live in New York. The rest live in Kansas City, Houston, Delaware, Kentucky, Alabama. So I stand here tonight not as a scientist, not as a PhD, not as an activist, but as your neighbor. This is a picture of my grandfather along the eastern shore of the lake where our property is located. Seneca Lake has been in my family's blood for generations. He and my grandmother raised their 3 daughters on this lake. Our family has fished these waters, fallen in love, grown old, started new families. And when our hearts were broken or hard times fell, we came to the woods at the lake in search of peace. Here's me in one of my earlier boat rides. I learned to swim in Seneca's pure waters before I learned to walk. My mother told me that Seneca Lake had healing powers. My mother and stepfather owned the motel along Salt Point Road, which is now called the Anchor Inn. I'd go over to help, and I would meet people from all over the world who would tell me that this region was among the most beautiful they'd ever seen. I drove the pace car for the racetrack. My mother worked the race weekends. So when I think of this area, I think of the heritage of racing, tourism, and my own heritage, and what the lake means to me and my family. I was planning on building a permanent home on the property that's been in my family for generations when I learned about Energy's plan to store liquefied petroleum gas directly across the lake from me. So I decided I'd better look into it. It's not hard. You can just go to the Energy website or Google Energy, and you'll see videos and all kinds of plans for what they have for our region. So the more I learned, the more alarmed I grew. And now I'm reconsidering my plans to build on my property. If this is what's in store for this region, It will change everything we know and love about our home. To me, this is what Watkins Glen is all about. Wineries, racing, the beautiful tourist destination, not the gas, storage, and transportation hub for the northeastern United States. This is our jewel. This is our treasure. This is our Finger Lakes. Our Finger Lakes. I'm a school teacher, and I often read the story by Dr. Seuss, Horton Hears a Who, to my kids. As I read it the other day, I couldn't help but draw some parallels between the current assault on our region and this story. In this story, the large jungle animals cannot hear the voices coming from a tiny dust speck, and they are growing annoyed with Horton, the elephant, the only one who can hear the pleas, the only one who is defending the whos, the tiny beings whose entire universe exists on that speck of dust. They are about to boil the speck in a big pot of hazelnut oil. Unless the whos can make themselves heard. The mayor of Whoville rushes through the town searching for anyone who is not doing their share, not helping to make noise. And finally, he finds one lone shirker. And he grabs the fellow, and he climbs with the lad up the Eiffelberg Tower. This, cried the mayor, is your town's darkest hour, the time for all whos who have blood that is red to come to the aid of their country. He said, we've got to make noise in greater amounts. So open your mouth, lad, for every voice counts. So, this is your call to action. This forum will not put a stop to this project. Adding your voice is the only way. Each one of you needs to make noise if we are to preserve this region and to prevent it from becoming an industrial wasteland. If we are to protect this region for our children and our grandchildren, we have to speak up now. Because what will we answer when they ask us, how in the world did you allow this to happen? Don't be a shirker. Get informed, get involved, and please spread the word. Thank you.
Now, if I can invite the presenters to the stage, on stage right over here, to the table, where there are microphones that are live for you, and you shouldn't have to talk up very much. We move to the second portion of our forum tonight, and we'll go at least until 9:30, given the length of our presentations.